Our guest today is, in all sincerity, one of the busiest and most powerful politicians in Australia. All the more interesting when you consider that she only won her first election in 2012 against an historic landslide and up against, shall we say, a confident government. She took to opposition, though, like a sawn-off shotgun takes to crime. So frustrating, one of the government's most powerful war horses, that rumour has it he tore the padded armrests off his seat in Parliament House with his bare hands. In government, she's mastering a fascinating transformation and has an enormous amount of responsibility. Her job description includes local government, planning, infrastructure, investment and trade. Any one of these would choke a horse. If you just think of local government, there is one of our councils under investigation for electoral irregularities, another that is teetering on the brink. Planning is a bit of a sore point. There is the political death tube of Cross River Rail, and still in her inbox to do this year is to legalise a woman's right to choose in Queensland and convince the United Nations that we can still look after the Great Barrier Reef. As a balance for all of that responsibility, she gets the second best business card in Australia, the Deputy Premier of the great state of Queensland. Will you join in me in welcoming Jackie Ann Trad?
Well, thank you very much, Shane. I think apart from the sawn-off shotgun, that was probably the best introduction I've ever had. So thank you very much for warming up the crowd. I can guarantee you I won't be that entertaining. I too would like to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we gather, the Jagera and the Turrbal people, and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. To the Media, Entertainment and Arts Alliance and of course the all-important Parliamentary Media Gallery, thank you for the repeat opportunity to share some of my insights and detail the vision, direction and achievements of the Palaszczuk Labor government. Can I acknowledge in the room my good friend and newly elected Senator Anthony Chisholm, wherever you are, and also can I add my thanks to all of the sponsors who have made this event possible and the series of Queensland Media Club events possible throughout the year. The old adage that a week is a long time in politics has long been used to encapsulate the sometimes tumultuous and unexpected events that consume our ever-swirling media and political cycles. Well, since I last addressed the Media Club some 64 weeks ago, we have witnessed some pretty tumultuous periods and unexpected events in global, national and state politics. The United Kingdom shocked the world and voted to leave the European Union. The world appears to be waiting in nail-biting anticipation to see whether Donald Trump becomes the leader of the free world. Malcolm Turnbull became our 6th Prime Minister in 10 years. A national tax debate was seeded, botched and abandoned in record time. Australia had only its 7th double dissolution election, ostensibly on the grounds that the government needed a more workable Senate, but has now been bequeathed by the Australian people an even more complex Senate. Tim Nicholls has finally become the leader of the Liberal National Party in Queensland, but only just. And Queenslanders turned over almost half of the number of council leaders and councillors during the quadrennial elections and then voted in favour of fixed 4-year terms, a long-held ambition by both sides of politics for more than a quarter of a century. But most importantly, the Maroons won their 10th State of Origin series out of the last 11. But while all of this was taking place, the Palaszczuk Labor government was getting on with the job of delivering on the vision and direction that I detailed here last year. Our vision to grow our economy by both playing to our strengths and growing an innovation culture. Our plan to create certainty and transparency around our infrastructure program for our economy and for our community. And our ambition to continue in the Labor tradition of creating jobs and a skilled workforce and delivering quality frontline services. And it was Wednesday's somewhat staid and factual report of the quarterly ABS figures on state final demand that showed that the government's economic vision and plan is working. The Palaszczuk government has a steadfast commitment to delivering jobs for Queenslanders, both in the short term and for the future. Our most recent budget laid the foundations on which we will build our economic legacy and deliver those jobs by building infrastructure, through attracting investment, and by driving innovation in new industries right across the state. These are the key principles of our economic strategy and the means by which we are growing jobs. 14 months ago, when I addressed this forum on the need to not only identify funding for important new infrastructure projects for our state, I also addressed the crucial need to reform the way we plan, prioritise and deliver infrastructure in our state. The government's Capital Works program is an integral component of our state economy, in fact any state economy across the nation. It creates tens of thousands of jobs and provides a catalyst for private sector investment. Underscoring our commitment was the significant investment increase in our Capital Works program, growing from $35 billion over 4 years in our last budget to more than $40 billion in this year's budget over the forward estimates. In my portfolio alone, we've established the signature $2 billion State Infrastructure Fund, or the SIF as we've come to call it. Amongst other things, the SIF has provided $500 million to fund priority economic works across the state, as well as significant regional infrastructure projects to drive jobs and confidence throughout Queensland. But we know that investment in infrastructure is more than the immediate boost to the economy that results from the construction activity. The real long-term benefits are realised in the increased economic productivity due to infrastructure investment. That means what projects we fund and when we deliver them becomes a critical choice in an environment where competition on a constrained budget is ever present. In order to make the best choice in this environment, we knew that we had to deliver real reform, something Labor governments have never shied away from. Our infrastructure reform agenda is four-pronged. Firstly, we've established Building Queensland, an independent infrastructure advisor to government. Building Queensland's key role is to provide independent rigour to business case development for major infrastructure projects that require significant public investment. By independently and rigorously assessing major projects and publishing a pipeline of investment-ready projects, BQ lifts the standards. It provides transparency for the community and, importantly, it takes the politics out of key infrastructure projects, the benefits of which likely span many generations and the political divide. The second prong of our infrastructure reform agenda is the State Infrastructure Plan, a clear pipeline of projects that chart the course of Queensland's infrastructure needs over the next 20 years. Without a clear pipeline of projects, infrastructure delivery becomes directionless and potentially inefficient and subject to political whim. The SIP is an essential component of ensuring smart investment in projects and gives confidence to taxpayers, government and the private sector alike. The third prong of our agenda is the State Infrastructure Fund, which I mentioned earlier. In addition to funding priority economic works and significant regional infrastructure projects, the SIF importantly provides funds to back projects that have been recommended as ready for investment by Building Queensland. Importantly, through the SIF, the Queensland Government has provided the single largest ever allocation at $850 million to advance Cross River Rail, our #1 infrastructure priority. As we've done that, not only And we've done that not only because Cross River Rail is a critical public transport project, and it is, not because it will mean thousands of construction jobs, though it will, and not only because we need a second river crossing for heavy rail, though we do. It's our number one priority because Cross River Rail will also fundamentally transform our city and our region. We see Cross River Rail as a city-making moment like never before. It will mean we can better link residential growth areas to key employment hubs, which is critical when you consider that 80% of our population growth will occur outside the Brisbane local government area, while 45% of all new jobs will be created within the Brisbane local government area. And it will deliver huge economic benefits from transport-oriented developments emerging around the new station precincts at Woolloongabba, Bowen Hills, Roma Street, Albert Street, the Exhibition and Boggo Road. Our preliminary economic analysis suggests that Cross River Rail will contribute some $70 billion to Queensland's gross state product over 40 years and create more than 84,000 ongoing jobs within the corridor and right across the SEQ rail network. A major city-making project like Cross River Rail or the North Queensland Stadium in Townsville wield enormous potential for the future of our state. And finally, our fourth prong is all about a more effective capital program management process. We're doing this through a new infrastructure portfolio office in my agency, which has been established progressively over the last 6 months. We're also doing this through the active oversight of our new Infrastructure Cabinet Committee. And while this doesn't sound exciting, it is absolutely essential. It's about ensuring that our capital budget gets out the door and into local communities to deliver the jobs and the projects that we say we will. For too long, governments in Queensland have seen a large capital underspend year on year. Of course, there's often legitimate reasons for this, but not always. And over the past 5 years, the average variance between the budgeted capital program and the actual spend has been around $1.8 billion, with this peaking at $2.26 billion under the Newman-Nichols government. By any measure, this is too high. So we've set about addressing this, and it's paying off. As I mentioned before, this week we've seen the latest state final demand figures improve, rising 0.7% in the June quarter following a 0.1% increase in the March quarter. Public gross fixed capital formation was the largest contributor to growth at 6.8% and added 0.3% points to the state final demand. Importantly, this was driven by a 17.7% increase in investment by state and local public corporations. And this is helping breed confidence too, with the data showing private investment is up. Private gross fixed capital formation rose by almost 1%. This is the first increase in private investment since the LNG-associated private investment reached its peak in 2013. The increase was driven by strength in machinery and equipment and total dwelling investment. This is why infrastructure reform matters, and it's why we're so determined to drive this agenda in Queensland. It means a better spend of public dollars, it means better value for taxpayers, and it means boosting industry confidence to invest here in Queensland. It also means a stronger economic growth forecast going forward. And if we're going to be honest about it, it matters now more than ever. Because this is good, sound policy, but clearly that's not the whole picture. This kind of policy also reflects the fact that around Australia, including here in Queensland, public infrastructure budgets have contracted from the highs experienced during the resources boom and as a reaction to the global financial crisis. This is not unique to Queensland, it's happening everywhere. And as we move to long-term settings, that are more sustainable. But as we do this in Queensland, we are keeping faith with the commitment that we made during the 2015 state election to deliver jobs right now as we shape our economy to thrive in the fastest growing region in the world. That's why today, I'm very pleased to announce a $70 million local jobs boost. This package consists of $50 million worth of fast-track local government grants and $20 million to get less mature local infrastructure projects investment ready. The grants package will allow us to get local projects built faster by cutting red tape and streamlining the application process. This means boots on the ground in weeks, not months, or years, and jobs for local contractors. The $20 million maturing the infrastructure pipeline program is aimed at helping turn aspirational infrastructure projects into a reality. It will function by offering assistance with project evaluation and attracting private sector investment, things that few local councils have the resources or the expertise to develop themselves. This is investment in infrastructure that will go hand in hand with the growth that we are delivering through our innovation programs under the Advanced Queensland agenda. Advanced Queensland is a key part of the Palaszczuk government's economic vision for Queensland. We want to develop new industries and diversify our economy, but we also want to use our innovation strategy to complement our great existing industries and play to our natural strengths. It's clear that with falling commodity prices, some of our traditionally strong export sectors have been doing it tough. And while mineral and agricultural exports have fallen in the last quarter, LNG and service exports have also risen strongly. Diversity is the key, and it is diversity in our exports that Labor governments have always driven. A prime example is the development of the LNG industry by the Bligh government, which took advantage of Asia's search for a cleaner energy source, diversifying our exports as well as creating jobs during the construction of associated infrastructure. Similarly, the Palaszczuk government's investment in the international education and training sector will lead to Queensland jobs and stronger international links in the future. We can clearly see the benefits of this export diversity in the last quarter, with $800 million increase in LNG exports and $850 million increase in service exports from tourism and international education. This is despite the decline in revenue from our traditionally strong exports like commodities. And while we recognise we can't control global prices, we can make sure we've got a vibrant and diverse export sector which can respond to global changes, particularly in Asian markets, where demand is thriving in the world's fastest growing region. Queensland is in an enviable and strategic geographic location. We are capitalising on this growth by expanding Queensland's presence in important Asian markets, with new trade offices opening in Singapore and Chengdu this year. We want Queensland to be Australia's most attractive and dynamic trading partner. That's why I've been focused on delivering a new international education and training strategy funded with an additional $25 million over the forward estimates in this year's budget. And it's why we will soon launch a new whole-of-government trade and investment strategy to ensure that we match what Queensland has to offer with what the world needs. As a government, our job is to position Queensland to thrive in the fastest growing region in the world. To do this, we need to help exporters enter new markets and to build new opportunities. We need to leverage our Advanced Queensland agenda to make innovation strengthen our existing great industries like agriculture, resources, tourism and education to secure the jobs of the future. And we need to channel foreign investment into new job-creating projects for Queenslanders. Investment is key to securing high-paying jobs now and into the future, and the Palaszczuk government is leading the way. No one can or should underestimate the political climate necessary to attract foreign investment into our state or open doors for Queensland companies abroad. Relationships are key. Mutual understanding and respect is critical. Protectionist economic populism succeeds in politics when economic security is uncertain, when jobs are hard to come by, particularly in regional Queensland. This isn't particularly new for us here in Queensland. We've witnessed the rise of One Nation and then the rise of the Australia Katter Party, followed by the Palmer United Party and now the return of One Nation. Illustrating this was Hanson's constant and repeated electoral defeats during an extended period of economic growth and certainty in our nation. Because people are feeling like the economy is working against them rather than for them, they want something other than the major political parties. However, it's not in anyone's economic interests for political leaders to provide political legitimacy to any extreme group. I'm not saying that voters who support One Nation, or CAP for that matter, should be ignored. But what I am saying is that the LNP duchessing a political organisation with extreme protectionist and xenophobic views will damage Queensland's economy. That the LNP's legislative support to re-regulate the sugar industry has compromised our reputation as a safe place to invest. Labor will always take the approach that promotes economic stability, jobs growth and social inclusion, because that's what Queenslanders want. They want government to strengthen the economy and secure their jobs through supporting our traditional industries and diversifying through innovation. They want government to consult with them and listen to their concerns, and they want important projects to be built that connect their communities and deliver livability over the long term. Increasingly evident is that at a state level, the LNP is led by a traditional liberal without overwhelming party room support, who is at the behest of extremists, both within his party and outside. Interestingly, it also appears to be the lot of the Liberal leader at a national level. More than ever, Queensland needs the very real, hard-working and inclusive approach offered by Anastasia Palaszczuk. As I commenced, the adage, with a week is a long time in politics, this was attributed to Harold Wilson, the British Labor Prime Minister who led the United Kingdom's entry into the European Union during the 1970s. I mention this not only because it's topical, but because it also serves to remind us of the very vulnerable and temporary nature of political legacies. What does endure, however, is change and progress. The Palaszczuk Labor government knows this. Labor has always fundamentally understood the obligation of leading change, of sharing in the prosperity that comes from progress so that it benefits everyone, regardless of where they live, how much they earn or the colour of their skin. That's why an economic vision is critical for our state, and that's why our economic plan is focused on being an open economy, open to the global economy and attracting investment, by securing economic growth by playing to both our strengths and a new innovation culture, and by building the infrastructure that returns productivity and secures livability for our communities. And in the long weeks ahead, as we march towards the next state election, you can be guaranteed that every single member of the Palaszczuk Labor government will be working hard to deliver on our economic plan in the interests of all Queenslanders. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Deputy Premier. Now we have the Media Gallery's contribution to the afternoon, when members of my team get to ask the Deputy Premier some questions. I'm sorry that we can't open it up to the floor. We'll only be here for about 20 minutes. But I wanted to kick things off by saying you've been 18 months now in government. You've settled into your seat in the chamber with its recently reupholstered armrests. And I wonder if now, given the last 18 months' experience, that you regret any of the tactics you used against Campbell Newman when it was his turn.
Well, I didn't expect that question, Shane, because clearly the tactics worked. But no, I think the important point to make with respect to that was that the very small Labor opposition that was led by Anastasia Palaszczuk went into that chamber and represented the views of what appeared to be an increasingly frustrated Queensland population. And I think quite clearly what was obvious was that Campbell Newman wasn't listening to Queenslanders and he wasn't listening to the Labor opposition. So I think all of our tactics were entirely appropriate, considering the growing discontent in the Queensland community and the fact that it did result in the defeat of Campbell Newman.
Anna Bligh's tactic to attack his family, exposed as being false, was so heinous that the CCC is now examining curtailing press freedom to stop the same thing happening again from people making claims about candidates. That's a high price to pay, don't you think, for that tactic?
So you're talking about the tactics prior to the last term of government. Look, I'll let the CCC do their work, but I think let's not be too one-sided about this. The election campaign for the 2012 election started by Campbell Newman attacking Anna Bligh's husband. I sat in the chamber while Campbell Newman attacked my husband. I don't think that this was a particularly new tactic, I have to say. And quite clearly the Queensland people had a view on that tactic at the 2012 election.
And now that you're in government, do you have any sympathy for the difficulties of government?
Oh, I have always known that government is a very difficult proposition. But you know, the worst day in government is better than the best day in opposition. So you get to do things in government that you only dream about in opposition.
Now I might throw it open to my colleagues. Is that Sarah? Sarah Vogler from The Australian.
Deputy Premier, you mentioned One Nation in your speech. Last time they were prominent in Queensland, they stole more seats from Labor than they did the Liberals and Nationals. Are you concerned about that coming into the next election, and how will Labor tackle One Nation?
Thanks, Sarah. I think it's important that every political party has the ability to assess and understand their opponents. I think that's pretty clear, and I was around when One Nation held 11 seats in the Queensland Parliament, and that wasn't very long before it destabilised completely. It's important that we understand why there is electoral support for One Nation, and there is quite clearly electoral support for One Nation because many people feel like the economy is not working for them, that they don't have secure employment, that they do see the economy slowing down in their local communities, and the government needs to be responsive to that, which is why we've increased our investment in infrastructure, and it's why we're delivering quality frontline services, and it's why we're consulting with Queenslanders as opposed to ignoring them or denying them a voice in government. So quite clearly, we know that our job is about listening and working with Queenslanders, not against them, and making the economy work for them.
Is this 70 million that you've talked about today part of that, especially to target the regions where One Nation is strongest?
Well, the $70 million is a compilation of a number of grants that currently exist but delivered in a much more efficient way, as well as maturing the infrastructure pipeline. So it is about listening to councils who are saying that they don't have the amount of work that they need to get their work crews out, and that has a direct impact on local economies. It's about seeing that there are projects that need to be done in the lead up to the next natural disaster season, and wanting government to assist and partner with local councils to make sure that those projects get delivered so that communities are more resilient before the next natural disaster season strikes. So, and it is about being true to our state infrastructure plan, where we do detail the community aspirations around infrastructure ideas and saying, well, we've got a bucket of money that you can access to analyse and assess whether your infrastructure ideas stack up, and if they do stack up, we're going to help you get investment, whether that's government investment or private investment, to make your infrastructure projects a reality.
I think George Roberts from the ABC has the microphone.
Thank you, Shane. Thank you, Deputy Premier. I just wanted to follow you up on your frankness about the rise of One Nation and the potential threat, I suppose, they could pose to trade, etc. Labor at the last state election preferenced One Nation ahead of the LNP in some seats, and after bringing in full preferential voting, that could see more preferences flow to One Nation. So is it fair to say that Labor has had a hand in that, and do you think you could regret after the next election, which is only about 18 months away, so you have to convince people that they do have that economic certainty that you're talking about, could you end up regretting some of those manoeuvres?
George, I'll have to take that on notice in terms of the Labor Party preferencing One Nation above the LNP. I certainly know that there was a combined third party how to vote card that had the LNP last everywhere. but it's been a long-standing position that the Labor Party does not preference one nation. It preferences one nation last, but I'll take that on notice. Look, as I said before, and the only thing I can repeat is that the Palaszczuk Labor government is completely attuned to the fact that there are local communities out there who are doing it tough, and Townsville is clearly one of those communities, but also Central Queensland and also the Wide Bay region. And we have been responsive to those concerns. I think people would have seen in the release of the State Infrastructure Fund during the budget, we prioritised a number of regional projects that were significant, that could be upscaled quickly, that would deliver local jobs, but would also deliver a level of economic activity and productivity for local communities. And as we see them rolling out now, we know that it's having a direct impact in local communities. So what we need to do is be responsive to the fears, the very legitimate and real fears and concerns of people who see a slowing economy in their local regions, and be able to intervene as a government to provide the projects that they need, to provide the stimulation in terms of the local economy that's required to give them security.
There have been some divisions in the Cabinet recently that the Premier categorised as either just a very vociferous difference of opinion or, depending who you believe, a leadership challenge. How would you categorise it?
Rubbish, complete rubbish. The Cabinet, and I'm sure that all Queenslanders would agree, when we are looking at very important laws for our state, important policy positions that will provide a legacy for future Queenslanders, it is incumbent on every single Cabinet Minister to come to the table well informed and able to test out whatever proposition is put before the Cabinet, because if we can't do that, then the Queensland people won't be able to do that either. And in that environment, we do have robust debates, and we're entitled to have them. And the Premier presides over a very, very open and frank Cabinet process, and it's to be commended. For anyone to categorise it as a divisive forum is just rubbish and does not bear scrutiny.
Have there been some who've come poorly prepared?
No, I think that every single minister is working incredibly hard and diligently, and that's why we do have great conversations at Cabinet.
Is there someone down there? Lauren Day from Channel 10.
Thank you. Deputy Premier, this week you said you would continue working with the Lord Mayor in relation to the Metro, and that was the day after the Premier said he should forget the idea completely. Can you clarify where you stand on that, and also why your opinion did differ from the Premier's?
Thank you very much, Lauren. And just to be abundantly clear, the Premier's position and my position are the same. If the Brisbane Metro relies upon access to the Go Print site, which is a state government landholding, which has a priority development area declaration over it, and which has for 6 years been identified as an important station for the Cross River Rail project, as well as an urban renewal precinct, if the Brisbane City Council requires that site to be a massive car park for its buses, then the project won't stack up and it should go back to the drawing board. But I have said consistently to Lord Mayor Graham Quirk and to Adrian Schrinner, who is the council leader for this project, that we are happy to work with them on the business case, but we are yet to see any technical studies. We're yet to see anything that demonstrates to us that this project is anywhere near a level of maturity where there should be negotiations around sites, alignment, and also financial contributions.
Speaking of transport, what's the solution on the M1? Do we dig our heels in anymore? Infrastructure Australia had something to say about it today.
Yeah, Infrastructure Australia just placed it on its high priority list, which means that they recognise that fixing this bottleneck means enormous economic benefit to our state. Enormous economic benefit not to our state economy, but an improved quality of life for many people living in Logan. So I think our position should be clear. If it's good enough that the federal government funds the M1 80/20 across the border in New South Wales, they should do the same in Queensland.
We've swallowed 50/50 on other roads. Does that weaken our position?
So in terms of the Ipswich motorway, and we did accept a 50-50 position at the end of the day, that was because the federal government took this road out of the land transport network, which meant that in terms of arguing the case for an 80-20 split, according to their own interjurisdictional agreement, we didn't have a leg to stand on. In terms of the M1, it is on the land transport network, and we believe that if it's good enough that the federal government funds 80-20 across the border for Mike Baird for the M1, they should do the same in Queensland for the Palaszczuk government.
So what do? Stand on our dig, complain, picket, what?
Well, look, I think we actually need to get a real assessment from the federal government about what they're going to do in the infrastructure space. During the federal election, the biggest infrastructure project they funded was $150 million transport, TIAC, the Transport Rail Corridor. Now, this is an important project, and it's one that the Queensland government values and prioritises, and we are in the process of developing the business case for TIAC. But this is a project that will require some $800 million in total, and the federal government put $150 million on the table during the federal election, and that was their single largest infrastructure promise during the federal election. What that says to me is we have a federal government that is retreating from funding important nation-building infrastructure in our country, and that is a problem. So what we need to do is we need to continue to talk to the federal government, but what we need to make clear is it's just not good enough that they're pumping lots and lots of Commonwealth dollars into places like New South Wales and Victoria and punishing Queensland and leaving us behind.
JT helped get the stadium up. Is Corey Parker busy next year? He's from Logan, isn't he?
He is
There's
from
politics
Logan.
in the blood. Anyone spoken to Corey Parker?
Logan. I'm happy to conscript him.
I'm sorry, I can't see you. Someone... Way you go.
Thanks, Shane. Deputy Premier, just picking up on Shane's question about the leadership tensions or perceived tensions, I'm just curious about your 100% guarantee of no leadership spill in the Labor Party. Is that a dangerous promise for a politician to make, and what kind of damage do you think ongoing speculation could do in a wider sense?
Look, I have to be 100% honest here. There is no prospect of a spill. Anastasia Palaszczuk took the Labor Party from 7 members in opposition to winning government only after 3 years in opposition. And let me tell you that in the time that I have worked alongside Anastasia, she has tackled some of the biggest issues that have been left in the too hard basket in Queensland for many years, whether that's fixed 4-year terms, providing the economic certainty and the political stability that our state needs, whether it's removing 17-year-olds out of prison, lots of social problems, but also increasing or focusing our economy on where we need to be in the future. Eyes towards Asia, innovative and playing to our traditional strengths. I think that all of this scuttlebutt is exactly that. It's scuttlebutt that just does not have any credibility inside the Labor caucus.
Do you want the job?
No.
Come on.
No. I love my job and I absolutely love working with Anastasia.
Never ever, Deputy Trad.
I'm happy to say no.
Never ever, you don't want to be Premier of Queensland ever, under any circumstances.
I don't want the job. I love the job that I'm doing, and I'm completely focused on delivering on our big reform agenda and getting important infrastructure projects across the line that the federal government needs to partner with us on.
Yes, Bill.
Deputy Premier, I just wanted to ask about Cross River Rail. You've mentioned how important it is to the state. Does the state government need to consider investing more than it has already to make it a reality? And just a cheeky second question. You also mentioned the importance of infrastructure for jobs and the economy. Are you at all concerned about the scenes we saw yesterday where the CFMEU led or took part in a protest and peeled off people from inner city construction sites for what appeared to be an unrelated matter in interstate?
Thanks, Anthony. On the first topic, in terms of Cross River Rail, we are incredibly committed to making this project happen. And I know that there are many people in the business community, in the infrastructure sector, construction sector, who want to see this project happen. And we can outline all the reasons, but fundamentally it needs to happen, because if it doesn't, it's going to have a huge impact on our state economy. So it just needs to happen. What that means in terms of our engagement with the federal government has been very clear. We have responded to all of their requests in terms of identifying long-term innovative funding and financing models that could be attached to this project. We have articulated for them, Paul Fletcher most recently, when I sat down and met with him, about the huge economic and innovation strategy that could occur along the Cross River Rail corridor. So we are working with them. We've invited them to participate in the Delivery Authority Board, because we know that they don't just want to hand over money, they want to be able to steer projects as well in terms of their delivery and in terms of their value uplift. So we've invited them onto the board. We are keen to work with the federal government in order for them to make a contribution and de-risk the project for significant private sector investment. Whether or not that means a bigger allocation in the future, I think, is too early to surmise. I think that what we need to do is continue in our conversations with the federal government and with the local council around making this project a reality. And look, in terms of the second point, clearly, the unions involved felt very strongly about the unfair dismissal of a number of workers. We know that in terms of industrial disputations, they're at an all-time low in Queensland. So the impact in terms on the Queensland economy, I think, needs to be kept in that perspective.
I'm mindful of the time. Is that you, George? Did you want another one?
No, next door.
I'm sorry, I can't see. Oh, it's Mr. Love from Channel 7.
Yes, hello. Just back to the Metro before, you were saying that you're yet to see a business case from the Brisbane City Council. Could they access the funds in which you've announced today to help out local governments to get that business case up, or what's the intention of these funds? And then can I also ask, as a side, another little cheeky one, who are you supporting tonight between the Titans and the Broncos?
The Broncos? Yeah, I know. I couldn't watch the game in my household unless I supported the Broncos. So just to make that really clear. But in terms of the Metro, look, Brisbane City Council is, it's open to all councils. So clearly they're not going to be prohibited from applying for it. But I think we need to be really clear that Graham Quirk increased rates by 4.7% on average in the last council budget to fund this project. So already he's got a revenue stream to support this project, whether that's in the business development phase or in the construction phase. So, I would hope that that money would go to councils that are finding it really difficult to increase their rates base because of very, very poor economic conditions. So, it's up to, all of the applications will come in, there'll be an independent assessment, but I do make the point that Graham Quirk did increase rates by 4.7% in the last budget to support this project.
I think we've had enough fun. What do you do for fun?
I haven't had fun in a long time, can I say, Shane? I hang out with the Media Gallery.
Yeah, we're loads of fun, aren't we?
Well, particularly when people are leaving. And there's been a few departures of late, yeah.
Yeah, sad but true.
Yeah.
You have one more job to do. We have to draw the Lucky Door Prize, the winner of the Federation Penfolds Bin.
Des, how did you put your card in?
He drunk it already, I think. Did they leave it unprotected? Have we got the... Here it is. And the winner is...
David Pollock from OT UDP.
Congratulations, David. You are the winner of the Civil Contractors Federation Penfolds Bin 389. You can collect your prize from the front desk and keep the applause going for the Deputy Premier, Jackie Crabb. Thanks.